Hello ladies and germs, we are back. The KX85 is going in a positive direction finally. We are about to slap these cases back together and maybe even put some of those parts inside of it. And then if all goes well, I'm going to at least have the cases back together tonight. We're warming up for an all-nighter here. I'm in the flow. I've been eating this terrible granola bar. Gone through about an entire box of them, as well as oatmeal cream pies. So I'm running off the race fuel right now, and you know the noggin's just running. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. I've had the crank and all the transmission and main bearings in the freezer for a little while, and since this process is going to take a little while, and the fridge is far too many steps away, just filled this thing up with ice, and that'll keep everything at the temperature I kind of need it at for right now. I'm going to start by putting the main bearings in first, because I'm going to want those to warm up, and I'm actually going to heat them up afterward, so we can put the crank in hopefully without having to use any additional tools. If I act fast enough in that process, I should be able to just slide the cases together, because the bearings are actually like press fit around the crankshaft itself. But yeah, let's go. Never mind, I left the main bearings next to my tilapia. Alright, first things first, we need to put some crank seals into their home. To do that, I'm just going to put some grease around them, help them slide in and seal up a little bit better. I believe both sides are symmetrical, and then obviously the flat / hard facing side is going to go outwards on both sides. And then I'm just going to check periodically and see when they're seated up, so we got just a little bit more room to go here. The right tool for the job would be like a bearing driver or something, but since this is basically just a flat edge itself, it does the same job. Just a little bit more on that side. Alright, so you can see that crank seal is seated all the way around like that. It's good to add just a touch of grease to the inside here, nothing crazy. That way just the crank slides through real nice and easy when we put it in. Get it started. See where we're at, and that one's all seated up. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add some heat, and I'm gonna really just try to do the outer rim of this, because I don't want to melt that crank seal that I just put in. You don't have to go crazy with this, obviously, because that bearing's already cold, so it should fall into place pretty easy. Once you hear that, you know, like metal on metal where it's obviously bottomed out, I'm just hitting it lightly. Make sure that I hear it all the way around. And now that's prime time. So we're moving on to the transmission bearings here. Alright. Rinse and repeat. Heat, cold bearing, press. Heat, cold bearing, press. I'm not super heating these cases either. I'm really just heating them up to like running temp. It doesn't take much with these 85s to get these bearings in. Obviously, we've got this side up because we have those channel locks here. And that one falls right in. Bottomed out. And away she goes. Whoa, that's hot. That's this side done, fellers. And that is quite warm. You know what really made me want to kick a fat kid just now? Sat down in my lawn chair and I forgot that was there. Ripped her right off, dude. Made me go. Now I was already super pumped because I just spent 2 hours wiping silicone away, so pretty stoked that that happened at that right moment. Anyhow, we'll put this guy to the side for right now, and move on to the clutch side. Going down, 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 and the flames went higher. Flip her over. That guy. Probably don't need to add much heat here since I was just heating there. While these cases are cooling off so I can add assembly lube to them and start putting the transmission back in there, I'm going to take out the seals and replace them, starting with this kickstart seal right here. Easiest way I like to do these guys is just use a slide hammer on them. Oh, you don't want to play nice, huh? Okay. I'm sorry. There she goes. And we're just gonna drive her in. And immediately fuck it up. Add a little grease to her. All done. Now I'm going to replace the power valve actuator seal. Pull this guy out. I go extremely light, hardly any grease on the water pump seal, because what that can cause is contaminating your coolant, which is no bueno. And then all you have to do with the water pump seal is just give her a good yeah, and you're from time, just like that. Alright, I'm going to reinstall the slide hammer here. We'll pull this seal out. Might need to resize here. Nope, I can get that. Alright, we got it. Now we will pull the shifter seal out. Well, that was easy. You'll see a lot of the things that I'm doing, you'll probably notice that I'm not using professional grade tools. You might even go, what the hell is he doing? Truth of the matter is I've never really had the right tool for the job. I've just either had to make the right tool or figure out how to use the wrong tool the right way. And I think that's useful knowledge for other people, because you don't need to buy thousands of dollars worth of tools to be able to do this work. I'm using a $90 Walmart socket set and like a handful of specialty tools, but like nothing crazy. What I do need to start doing though is cleaning up after myself. This shop is starting to turn into a real mess, which does not make things easier. But when you're in the flow, you're in the flow, baby. So now what's going to happen here is I'm going to start putting assembly lube into these bearings. Why not just use regular oil, you might ask? Regular oil is a lot thinner than assembly lube, so really by the time you end up getting this thing together, these brand new bearings that don't have any oil in them at all, that thin oil will run out of them by the time you've got this case together. I think it's important to have this thick stuff in there to really prep these bearings and make sure that nothing's running dry when you first start this. And then obviously you won't run it. I'll just break the motor in and then immediately take this oil out, because the regular oil that you'll run in these will flush out this assembly lube. So you'll just change the oil once and then get into your regular oil change intervals after break-in. So at this point I'm also going to put these retainers back in and torque stuff down while I'm going through and putting assembly grease into these bearings. These retainers, I'll add just a dab of Loctite, nothing crazy. Bad news bears if these retainers come out though. 8mm retainer bolts call for 78 inch-pounds. For the Phillips head retainer bolts, it's 48 inch-pounds, which is equivalent to 4 foot-pounds. Alright, time to throw the transmission in. Yeah. I'm going to apply assembly lube fairly liberally to our transmission here. Since I did clean all the contaminated oil off, there's no oil left on the transmission right now. I'm really just doing it in the shift fork points, because once we put oil in this bike, the transmission is going to be sitting in an oil bath, so that's not going to be a huge deal, but I want to get the tighter areas of this transmission nice and slippery, baby. Here. Oh, we've messed up already. Restart, maybe? Or can we make it work? Oh, good golly, we made it work. Okay, now that we've got the transmission in there, I'm trying to make sure that my hands are free of as many contaminants as possible so we can add a very thin layer of gasket maker to this case half. And this is truly just a thin layer because these cases are designed and milled to go together, and the gasket maker is just to fill up any possible imperfections. So delicacy and finesse is the name of the game. Here is what ideally a very thin layer of gasket maker looks like, and anywhere that maybe went a little overkill, especially on the inside of the case, yeah, just clean that up a bit. Actually be good to let that set for a second while I let that do its thing and harden up just a little bit. I'm gonna heat up this bearing. Okay, just gonna let that socket sit on there and heat up our bearing. Pretty standard operating procedure. The GoPro died in kind of the most pivotal moment. But as I believe before you cut out, you saw that we pulled the cases together, and I had to do something kind of unique because it didn't just slide on with heat and the crank being cold. So what I ended up having to do was, let's see if I can find my contraption here. I ran a chain adjuster bolt through here like that with a nut on the other side, and then I had another bolt going in that was a little bit longer than the normal case bolts on the far side, and then two bolts on either side, one on the top of the case and one on the bottom of the case. Obviously this isn't ideal, and typically what you would use in that scenario is an actual tool for that, which would be the opposite of a case separator, and it pulls them together. But we don't have that tool, so we made it work. And you know what? We sure did. So here we are. I don't feel any weird binding, vibration. Everything feels really good. I am going to add a little bit more, just a touch more assembly lube to this main bearing here. And before I get too excited and carried away here, because we're finally seeing some progress, but let's see if our transmission is transmissioning. So first, let's test if we have neutral. So I'll spin the clutch spindle. You have to hold this to be able to test that. Okay, that's good news. Let's go to first. It's a lot easier to get into first when you have some tension. There we go. Okay. First gear, back to neutral. Let's go to second. Third. There it is. Let's go to fourth. Jump to fifth. And the almighty sixth gear. Alright, now let's go back down. fourth, third, second, and neutral. That is a weight off my shoulders. There's nothing worse than having to split cases because you effed the transmission up. So I'm happy about that. And it looks like I got the gasket maker just right. Fingers crossed. I don't see any excessive splooging inside or outside of the case, so I'm really pumped on that. So let's start putting some of these case bolts back in, so we can start putting our clutch side back together, and maybe even a cylinder. It is 1 a.m. in the morning, so I'm starting to get a little loopy, but we got the hardest part done, so now might even crack a couple cold ones, huh? Might have a zillion beers. Maybe a zillion beers wouldn't hurt anybody. I'm kidding. But after this project is done, zillion beers better watch out, because I'm all in that bumper, dude. Alright fellers, that is the bottom end done. Whoop whoop. Time to hit the top end here. Before I start reinstalling and putting back together the top end here, I'm going to do my due diligence here and check ring gap. So we'll seat the rings in the cylinder, measure it with our handy feeler gauge, and see where we're at and see if we need to file them down. In she goes. And we'll just seat it in with the piston so it's make sure that it's straight in the cylinder. Right now, making sure that the piston is flush and that our opening, or our ring gap opening, is opposite of the exhaust or the power valve side. So the spec on this is 0.30 to 0.50 millimeter. So just double check that. I've got a 3.5 right here, and it's perfect, just barely catching. So our ring is in spec. What I'm going to do here is install one side of our circlip, and seeing how I have less room on this side, it'll be easier to put the second ring, or the second circlip, in on the opposite side. So we're going to install it on this side of the piston. Let's see if we can get this thing to fly across the shed and disappear forever. You know, I shouldn't have said that. Our ring, or our circlip, is installed. What I like to do, and I don't know if my GoPro will have the detail to show you, like if I bring you over to the light here, I like to leave this little, I like to have the circlip overlapping that opening, so the next guy that rebuilds this thing can just put a pick underneath and scoop that thing out. Not too much overhang where there's not enough of the circlip in the groove, but just enough where it's easy to grab for the next guy rebuilding this thing. With that done, I'm going to add some assembly lube to our piston needle bearing here. And then we'll lube up our pin here, our through pin. Get all the grease off my hands so I have a better chance of getting a good grip on this circlip right here. Right here. Seasoned veteran. Make sure everything's seated all the way in around here. And prime time. I already added a thin coat of oil to our cylinder, but it has been sitting for a little while, so I'm just going to add a little bit more. Nothing crazy, because I don't want this cylinder to glaze over on me when we first start it up, you know. Again, we're installing our piston ring with the gap on the opposite side of the piston as the power valve. And Wiseco actually gives you a little spot right here where you want to line that opening up. Again, I don't know if you can see on this camera or not, but you can. If you can, that's what's happening right there. And that's where it's meant to be. Take our paper towels out, and we are ready to put a cylinder on. Except let me just undo all that work I did previously. Alright, back on you go. Get on there. I ain't asking. Put this thing in the light, make sure we don't have any contaminants. Looks like we're good to go. Hot to trot, if you will. I'm gonna get any excess oil off this where it's gonna meet the base gasket, so we get a good seal. Time to pull the old one-man band maneuver here. And Bob's your uncle. Well, I don't know if Bob is your uncle. Everybody's got an Uncle Dick though, huh? So here's what our solder looks like inside the cylinder. Ideally, I would have kept our cover off here, but I should be able to do it with the kickstart. But I'm saying I would have kept the cover off because then I would have just used the stator bolt there to turn her over. But if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry frickin' Christmas, eh? Jeez Louise, guy. Frickin' idiot. Alright, let's see if we can turn this thing over. Naturally, it doesn't seem we can. Update, we did take the cover off. Makes life a bit easier. Alright, let's see what we're looking at. Alright, bust out our calipers here. Here's what it looks like after you, hence the squish. It is squeezed. So we got 106. Measure our gasket. 0.84. Let's do some math here, and I will get back to you with our results. Alright, mathematics complete. We're kind of at the upper limit, and by that I mean it's a bit looser of a squish. But that reading is actually right in the middle of where you'd want to be if you plan on running pump gas. And with that, the way it measured out, it's gonna be a really safe engine. You don't have to worry about piston and cylinder head contact due to thermal expansion or piston rock up at higher RPMs, and it's gonna lend itself really well to running this thing on 93. So pleased with that, and now we can move on to some of the final touches here. Finishing touches, and we've got a complete engine. Forward to doing the first start on this thing. I still have quite a bit to do on the bike itself. Looking at probably another all-nighter here, but I definitely want to check the jetting in this carb and what clip position it is. Because ain't a whole lot worse than not knowing you're jetting before you start up a fresh rebuild, and potentially that being the reason that it blew up in the first place. So we're going to check that out. And then I've also got rear wheel bearings, linkage bearings. I need to bleed the rear brake. I'm going to grease the headset bearings. I'm also going to grease all the suspension bearings. But luckily all that stuff won't take too long. What time is it right now? Oh man, it's still early. Prime time, baby. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. We've got a complete engine once again. I'm going to keep grinding here, but this is where the video is going to end. Probably not going to video jumping into this bike. I think we're going to go straight to the final product and first startup in the next video. And I'm hoping that that video is going to transition into maybe the kiddo taking the first ride on this bike. And I think that would all be pretty cool for... Maybe I'm projecting, but I'm really excited to see this kid's face when he starts this bike up and goes and rides it for the first time. So we're going to do the first startup hopefully tomorrow or the day after, depending on how this project goes tonight. And man, I'm really excited. I'm really confident that this motor came out well, did everything by the book, and everything went together really well. And we took our time. It was the little details that won this battle. I mean, look at this thing, all shiny, polished up, no detail spared, and that's the right way to do things. Even though we don't have the fanciest tools, don't have the biggest shop, you can still do good work, fellas. You don't need a crown on your head saying, "Oh yeah, I'm King Dingaling of building engines." You just got to get in there and take your time. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. And the next video is going to be the one to tune in for. You're going to see at least one kid's smile, and it's going to be mine. Hopefully. Or you're going to see a kid crying like he got coal on Christmas. That could be me too. You never know. That's it for this video, and hopefully we'll see you for the next one, eh?